God, I'm looking a bit rough and unkempt today. I need to get my hair cut. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot I can't go and get my hair cut, can I, because of the lockdown. Never mind, I'll go next week, if and when we're allowed. In the meantime, yeah, I do look pretty rough, don't I? So, right, I wanted to... Sorry, just move the camera a little bit closer. Sometimes I just get an urge to do a video about a particular topic, but this might run off in a number of different directions. But I'd really love to know, anybody who watches my videos, whether you can identify with what I'm saying, understand just your experiences as well. So, you know, I've made pretty clear my opinion on the era in which we live. I don't think it's one of ideas and enlightenment. I think it's one of stilted debate and ideology. And scarily and terrifyingly, ideology has won the war against ideas. There will be a rebellion against this age, and there'll be a new age of openness and of understanding and of conversation and of ideas and creativity and all those things. But that may take decades to come, maybe years, we'll have to see. There will be a pushback and a rebellion against this in time. Now, I'm not saying that there is no openness, conversation and understanding and creativity and progression and all those positive aspects that any society needs at the moment. I'm not arguing that at all, just that they are severely lacking, particularly conversation. Productive conversation, respectful conversation, creative conversation, and conversation that opens avenues to exploration of themes and issues, and conversation in which everybody understands that they play a part in the conversation of a nation and of an era, and that they have an important part to play. So that's what I want to talk about, like my kind of sometimes my struggles with this, because we live in an era where so many individuals it appears to me, don't necessarily do their thinking for themselves and contract their thinking out to the media and to the government, and buy into these powerful narratives and let themselves be overly influenced by powerful narratives, and thus end up quite tribalised from other aspects of the population. And I think when you feel like you're left meandering and floating in the middle of all this madness, it's so frustrating. That's how I feel. Now, just before I carry on, I am going to do another video very soon regarding how other aspects of who I am and other values that I have, that I'm not living up to those values. So in some other ways, I'm not helping society, and it's important that I do that and hold myself to account. For example, I can be really, very, very lazy and slip into my comfort zone far too much, and that's not necessarily helpful to me as an individual or to society as a whole. And I'm going to do another video around that. I like to do that, hold myself to account, as well as talk about these broader themes that apply to society. So I'm going to do that because I just want to ensure that I don't appear to be in any way, in any way, I guess, arrogant is the word, because I'm not. I want to appear to have some element of self-awareness here. And I do strongly believe that constructive criticism starts at home. It starts with the individual themselves. You must be willing to hold yourself to account and to constructively criticise yourself and improve yourself before you ask others to do the same, or you ask a society to do the same. So yes. But having said that, this channel is about the cultivation of ideas and the role of the individual in a world that is increasingly tending towards aggressive, tribalistic, and moronic and idiotic groupthink. So it's really interesting when let me just have a sip of coffee. I mean, what is a conversation? A conversation ultimately is something that you have to express feelings and emotions, and I guess which has it's a reflection on how you see in the world mirrored through another person. Really, that's all it is. They're just, I say they're just words. Words are very, very powerful, but they are just words. Yeah, it's how we use words and what effect and power words have over us, and the stories that govern many people's way of being and thinking by the media. So it's really interesting when I have a conversation with somebody who I would say is very, very open-minded. I like to think myself as very open-minded. The conversation is so engaging, interesting, enlightening. It runs off down a number of different tributaries into other interesting kind of like rivers of conversation, and it just flows naturally and organically. And I think it certainly brings out my curious side, and my thirst for learning and curiosity. And I love it, exploring topics, diving really, really deep into big important topics and themes of our times, going beyond the surface and going right deep down to discover what lies beneath the surface, to try to discover the truth and expose the lies, to try to find the meaning, to try to attach purpose and meaning to what we all observe. And as against conversations with, and this is where I'd really like people to feedback on this, other conversations where it's there is very little room for exploration, where you met just with answers rather than questions, where conclusions have already been drawn, and nearly exclusively always based not on very, very much, and nearly exclusively always those conclusions are what the media has informed that person already. That's the conclusion, that's the truth, that's the way it is, that's the status quo, that's the doctrine. So it's almost like there isn't a mirror when you're talking to those types of individuals, because there's nothing to be reflected back. Thus, there is no opportunity for the conversation to naturally develop and go down those interesting and meandering routes to discover and unearth other conversations on different topics that will further enlighten the broader conversation. And I find that really, really, really frustrating. And I'm just gonna have another sip of coffee. I think that people are a product of their times, and I think that we live in an era of 24-hour media, 24-hour social media, big tech and big media being able to create the stories that they want populations to buy into and to believe. And it's only those individuals who are curious to find out, well, hold on, what might be some alternative stories that may actually represent the truth. It's only those individuals, and I think the vast majority of people do tend to buy into these powerful narratives. I mean, we've had, and then it's which narrative do you want to buy into, isn't it then? Because there's always two, usually it's always two competing narratives, which have the effect of polarizing people into two groups, who then only seem to consume the information that they want to consume. And if you're one of the people who are left in the middle, you feel a bit helpless. Added to that, I've talked about it a lot before in previous videos about our addictions to comfort and convenience. And I have to include myself in that, but I'm aware of it. Comfort and convenience, our addiction to materialistic materialistic things and to money, and our many people's addiction to brainless TV, celebrity orientated TV, reality TV, mindless talent shows, all this kind of thing. Many people's addiction just to celebrity lifestyle, really. And we're left with populations that don't want to question, maybe that have forgotten how to question, that are just blindly accepting, and that are not content to, but will blindly trot out slogans, cliches that governments and media tell them to. Now, I think it's interesting to talk about, as well as this year, the exceptionally powerful messaging from government and media relating to COVID-19, and how at the absolute kind of like central tenet of that, I believe, is to make the messaging so simple yet so omnipresent that it's manipulating many people not to deviate from it, apart from those ones who understand that having a curious mind and having enough people with a curious mind in society is absolutely integral to that society's survival. So we've ended up with a lot of people who've been manipulated into believing a very, very simple message: this virus is going to kill you. You must wear a mask. You must lock down. You must not see your family. Think about how insane that is, and an absence of conversation and consideration of other opinion, and a consideration of facts that have been there hiding in plain sight all along. We look at other examples. I remember Brexit, which is still actually not quite over, and I was astounded actually at how that conversation played out and what it said about us as a society. How most people tended to seem to fall into one camp or another, and then as time went on became increasingly defensive of their position. And ultimately it wasn't about particularly the Remain side. I mean, the Leave side won. We voted to leave the EU. That should have been the end of it. But no, the leading up to the referendum, and then the conversation after, like I say, particularly on the Remain side, an inability to accept democracy. But more broadly speaking, I think on both sides, more so on the Remain side, an absolute inability to acknowledge any positives that could be attributed to the opposite view, i.e., what are for a Remainer, what could be the potential benefits of leaving the European Union, and for a Leaver, what could be the potential benefits of remaining in the European Union. That was more or less totally absent, and it shocked me. It made me realise that we do live in a society that is very egotistical, actually. I think that's what it comes down to. An inability to want to challenge beliefs, a society that holds strong doctrinal beliefs, mostly informed by the media, and a society with individuals, many of whom really don't want those beliefs challenged, and thus get to the point where they can't even countenance the fact that there may be some positive aspects of, to the opposite argument. Exactly the same thing with Trump at the moment, and for the last 4 years. How many people are actually aware that there are some exceptionally serious questions that are being asked by the Trump legal team in America, and that are going through the courts in relation to the integrity of the election that's just taken place, and the fact that there may have been widespread fraud? How many people are aware of that actual fact? How many people are aware that Joe Biden is not president-elect because it hasn't yet been decided? How many people are aware the US election hasn't yet been concluded? Well, no, because the media, again, the mainstream media, is not reporting it as that. It is telling a story that it wants to tell, and most people are buying into it. Other arguments like the climate change. If you don't believe in man-made climate change, you're a climate change denier. Not that you're a non-believer, you're a climate change denier, and increasingly you don't have a voice, you don't have a public platform, you don't have a public, a public platform to try to convince others of your argument. It's it applies to so many. The ultimate example is, of course, as I alluded to the other day, the mask wearing. You now have billions of people across the world putting masks obscuring their face, despite there being no proof of their effectiveness, despite the fact that the virus that the masks are alleged to protect against has a vanishingly small death rate. And I think what it is a conversation is, there are aspects such as context, background, evidence, proportion, and perspective that relate to a conversation. And I think that just seems to be largely missing. And when I do have a conversation with an individual who is appreciative of those entities and those aspects, and their conversation is informed by a desire to explore not only what may be true, but explore where we may, our own beliefs may be wrong, then it's such an enjoyable experience. But they seem to be quite few and far between, I find, in this era in which we live. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. But the other aspect to it is, I'm passionate about free speech, ideas, and freedom. And central to all of those three subjects is conversation. But it's also important for me as well to understand that when I do engage in a conversation with somebody who it's in my perception, I believe not to have a curious mind, the conversation ends with alleged facts and conclusions that are unquestionably true in that person's mind. I guess it's important not to get too down, not to get too defensive myself, and not to well, this is what I struggle with, is when you want a conversation to continue and you want to explore, you want to get to the bottom of things, and you want to find out and unearth, discover what needs to be found out, unearthed, and discover, is what then, rather than Brexit bad, Trump bad, climate change bad. Okay. Lockdown, good. Masks, good. Government policy, good. Do as we're told. Follow the rules. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Blah, 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 blah. But that's not the truth, is it? It's not the reality. That's just a story. Why is it a story? Why is it a story that so many people buy into? What else? What other layers to that story are there? What about that story may not be true? How may we be being manipulated? How do we return to a society and to communities that cherish connection and conversation and really enlightened discourse? That's what I've been wondering today. I find it a very, very frustrating time at the moment. And I really do find that the art of conversation is dying. Really is. Anybody who has a curious and open mind shines out like an absolute beacon at the moment. And again, I've said this before, it's not a case of what's right and what's wrong. It's never really about that. It's about finding meaning and exploring our own personal truths. But we can really only do that. No, we can do that by ourselves. But when it comes to conversation and societal conversations, I really do think that as a society that we're missing that link to building communities through conversation and connection. I really do. And I think it's really sad, and I find it exceptionally frustrating. Would really be curious to hear your views and opinions on what I've discussed here today. yeah, I think that's pretty much all I want to say. If you like my content, please feel free to subscribe, like, comment and share this video as well. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.